Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining and welcome back to Wall Street Silver. Joining us today is a very special guest, Greg Foss. Greg is the executive director at Validus Power Corp. They focus on sustainable energy, and he also has decades of experience in high yield credit trading as a portfolio manager. Greg, thanks for joining Wall Street Silver.
What a pleasure to be here. I love your account on Twitter. It's nice to know what's behind it.
Yeah, thank you. It's a huge pleasure for you coming to join us. I'm happy you joined today because I want to get your outlook on the economy, the Federal Reserve, and there's so much turmoil in the markets. People are really uncertain of where to put their money. Where are you putting your money right now, Greg? Is it hard assets like gold? Where's that?
Yeah, so I'm a credit guy. My history has always been in credit, and over 30 years, I started as Canada's first junk bond high yield trader using firm capital. Okay,
Wow.
I don't want to dox you. I know where you live. You understand that the Canadian market is a little different than the U.S. market, but here's what I know. I always follow credit markets. I believe they're far smarter than equity markets. Right now, the credit markets are nowhere near as cheery as the equity markets are. I'm bearish on equity prices. I think Nvidia trading at 36 times sales. Okay, people, do you understand
Wow.
what it means to trade at 36 times sales? How ridiculous that number is, despite how good the company. The growth rate needed to actually justify a 36 times sales number. You got to do the math. So where am I right now? I am suspect of credit. This whole debt, acting going on in the USA about the debt ceiling.
Right.
They'll resolve this one, and they're going to be right back at the table in 8 months. People, do the math, okay? This debt ceiling getting raised just means they buy themselves another 8 months before they have to raise the debt ceiling again. So it's a bunch of acting by it's political gamesmanship. So I think there's a lot of downside to asset prices now. That's includes credit. That includes equities. You need to hedge yourself. I own silver. Let's get that right out on the front of the table.
Good.
I love silver. I love gold. I just happen to love Bitcoin, the best of those three commodities that I just mentioned.
Yeah, you just said you mentioned you love gold. With everything that's happening with the debt ceiling acting, a lot of people are calling it out and saying this is all just acting. They'll just keep raising it and they'll never actually default. Where do you see gold play out, Greg, as let's say the Federal Reserve pause or even lower interest rates as they just can't do it anymore. They can't see any more
Right.
Yeah. Where do you see gold going? Like, is
Well,
there a
okay,
number?
so let's do some real quick math here, okay?
Right.
It is absolutely impossible for government debts to get paid off any other way than by printing money, okay? I could run through the mathematics for you 6 ways till Sunday. There is no way you will ever be able to tax the revenue base enough to pay down the accumulated debt, also including the interest expense.
Right.
Okay, which means, Ivan, very simply, fiat debasement is, get ready for it, 100% certain.
Wow.
So when you are given a certainty like that in life, you need to act on it, particularly in financial markets. So what does it mean? You need to own hard assets, assets that are not debased because of a unit of account that becomes debased, okay? So your house hasn't gone up in value in the last 30 years, Canada. I hate to tell you, it's just that the unit of account that is measuring the price of your house has gone down in value. So your house has maintained value and the unit of account has gone down. The same thing with gold. Measure your house price in gold. And you realize, well, they've sort of kept pace with each other. Measure your stock portfolio in gold. Oh, sort of interesting. A lot of things come out of the woodwork.
Right.
So I'm not going to predict the price of gold in foolish fiat dollars because fiat dollars are a Ponzi. They always have been. I could tell you a story about when I started working at the Royal Bank of Canada back in 1988. You want to hear it?
Yeah, tell us. I'd love to hear
Okay,
it.
so I graduated from Cornell University. First of all, I'm a McGill engineer. Realized I didn't want to be a full-time engineer. I went to McGill to play sports, but I was okay at math. So got lucky enough to apply to Cornell University in the USA, an Ivy League school. And I was one of the youngest kids in my class. I would not have made it into Cornell as an American, but they were starting an international business program, top 10 business school in the US. Wow. I get in because I'm Canadian. Sort of lucky. Okay. I get in. I didn't have to do any work experience in between. Okay. I would not have gotten in as American because while my marks were good enough, my work experience was zero. They don't let Americans in with zero work experience. Okay. So here I am, young kid, go down to Wall Street. I have the chance to work on Wall Street. I'm interviewing. I said, no, what? I'm going to go back to Canada. So I go back to Canada, back to my hometown of Montreal, where the Royal Bank still maintained its head office for finance. And I'm working directly for the CFO, Ivan, directly.
Wow.
And my first project was working on the Latin American debt portfolio because the banks in 1988 were all insolvent. Oh, like today. Okay. Why? Because a bank is an incredibly risky organization. They only have $4 of equity capital for every $100 of loans they have on their bank account, on their balance sheet, rather. So how often does a loan fall by more than 4% of its value?
A lot.
Pretty often, let me tell you. So banks are always insolvent, okay? Wow. Especially like they are in the United States right now. But here's what happened. 1988, Latin American debt. I do a quick back of the envelope calculation. I realized because of the Latin American debt portfolio of the Royal Bank of Canada, Royal Bank of Canada is insolvent. But I'm a 24-year-old kid. And I'm like, this is ridiculous. I've just done 6 years of school. And I come back to Canada's largest bank. And it's insolvent. So the first thing I do is I go to the CFO and I go, hey, Emil, we have a big problem. And his response was, I know, don't tell anybody. Holy effing, this is outrageous.
That's insane.
So, yeah. Anyway, Royal Bank of Canada wasn't alone, Ivan. So all the money center banks in the United States were as well. Chase Manhattan, note that's combined with JP Morgan. JP Morgan, Bankers Trust, Manufacturers Hanover. Most of these banks are no longer because they had to combine.
Wow.
Why? Because banks are incredibly risky and nobody accepts that because they're too big to fail. Why are they too big to fail? Because they have implied government backstops where they will print money to ensure that the biggest bank does not fail. So what is a bank, Ivan? Really simply, it is the transfer mechanism in the fiat Ponzi. Okay. Wow. That's all banking is.
Yeah.
And we are in the exact same position in the United States today. Hey, make no bones about it. If JP Morgan, the biggest bank in the USA, marked to market their commercial real estate portfolio, as well as all their held to maturity, long treasury bonds, they would also be insolvent, which is to say the book value of their equity would be vaporized.
So basically all of these banks in the US are coming to insolvency. Like they just don't show it.
Some of them are, because we saw it happen with three of the 20 largest banks in the regionals. Yeah. But banking is banking. So that's the risk in the market, just like it was in 1988. It hasn't changed. All they've done is kick the leverage in the financial system up a notch to the governments. And now the governments are insolvent, but the governments can print money. So if you're going to print money, what do you need to protect yourself, Ivan? Silver, gold, real estate. To an extent, equities when they're properly priced, but I don't think they're properly priced right now. No. And look, you got me on this show. I got to say it. Bitcoin. I love Bitcoin. Very simply why? It's math. And I love math. And I can prove things with math. I don't have to prove anything to people who don't understand mathematics. And I'm comfortable with Bitcoin. So there you go.
Yeah. You've said in a recent interview as well that in the 80s, there was like 15,000 banks. And now there's like, what, 5,000 banks?
Just under 5,000. That's correct.
Yes. Yeah. Like, so you can see the pattern over time. What happens when all of your regional banks in your home city just start closing up because they start going insolvent? So yeah.
Well, look, crazy. I'm not going to dox you, and I'm not sure, but you know how many? There's only 7 banks in Canada. They go coast to coast. Okay, that's a pretty efficient model for banking because you don't have to have duplicative loan officers 15,000 times. If the rule of 1 in 10 applied for banking, because it does generally for Canada. 1 in 10 population. So Canada's population is 1/10 the size of the United States, 1/10 the size of the economy. Should the Canadian banking system be 1/10 the size of the US, which means we would have 500 banks. No, the US is wrong in this case. The Canadian banking system makes more sense, which is to say there should only be 70 banks in the USA. Let's not go that far. I'll say there should be 250 banks in the USA, but there shouldn't be 5,000. Okay. It's that simple.
Yeah. You also said in a recent interview that you believe Jerome Powell is a horrible poker player.
Oh, yeah.
Why is that?
Well, you saw him. Okay, let's play poker. And then someone asked him a difficult question. We believe. How many times do you need to touch your nose? Because that's a sign of people lying.
Yeah,
you know
that's
that.
right.
That's body
right.
language.
That's
and that's very simple why I say that.
Wow. Is there any grace for these saving grace for these regional banks? Like, how do you stop the contagion from spreading? And like we talked about 15,000 banks from the 80s to 5,000, but how concerning is this, Greg? How do you stop this contagion?
Well, banking is banking.
Right.
You stop it by combining and making the banks bigger, which even makes them even too big to fail.
Wow.
But banking is banking. Like, it doesn't matter. You understand that they are the fiat transfer mechanism. The problem isn't banks. The problem is fiat money. Yeah. And that's why I go right to the highest level. Always look at credit markets. Look, banking is a good business if it's done properly. The problem is there's just too many bad bankers. They don't lend at the proper yield spread to reflect the true credit risk of the loans they're making. We've seen that they're horrible managers of interest rate risk, but they were listening to a lawyer that said, we're going to have rates lower for longer. So what did these monkeys do? They ran out and they bought 30-year treasury bonds because they believed that the lawyer was right. And then when the lawyer has to backpedal, oh my God, what happens to the price of a 30-year bond when interest rates go up? It shits the bed. They're down 40 bond points. And now they're like, uh-oh. Well, don't worry. These are held to maturity until people start doing some math and say, I want my money out of the bank. Yeah, and these guys are like, then I better have to sell these things. So you can call them held to maturity until you actually have to sell them. Don't you understand how banking works, you knuckleheads? It is so simple.
Realistically, these bonds are nothing but fiat contracts.
Correct. And that's why they are programmed to debase. It's 100% certain that your bond contract will debase.
So let's talk about de-dollarization. We're talking about fiat is inevitable. It's 100% going to debase. So let's talk about de-dollarization and what happens next. Do you think the Fed knows it's inevitable? The US dollar will go away or
no,
just...
I mean, it'll be the last... Yeah, it'll be the last fiat to fail. Like, I mean, this banking... Oh, yeah. I mean, so Canada will fail 10 years before the USA fails.
Wow.
That's my thing. So Canada will be the first G7 nation to fail. Wow. Just do the math. It's the smallest of the G7 countries. It has no affiliation with this European Central Bank. It's gone. It's over. Plus, we have a prime minister who thinks that the budget will balance itself. So that should give everybody a lot of real comfort that there's a CEO in charge that really knows what he's doing. So, I mean, the odds are stacked against Canada. But see, fiat works the same no matter what the denomination is. But Canada will fail first. Hundreds of countries will also fail before Canada fails. And then we'll get down to the nitty-gritty. Who fails first? Japan, the ECB, or the European, or the United States? I don't know. I don't care. At that point in time, your dollar, no matter what, is worth a fraction of what it is today, and you need to own hard assets to protect you against that.
Absolutely. So what's the next step, Greg? Do you think they roll out a central bank digital currency, and will people just blindly accept it, or will it be like...
Some people, I mean, I could ask you the same question. It's only opinion. Some people will, some countries will, some countries won't. I am totally anti CBDC.
Me too.
Because all a CBDC is digital fiat with surveillance. And I'm a freedom guy. Okay. I got caught up with this freedom convoy in Canada because I love freedom. Okay.
Yeah,
and too. I didn't break any laws, but I'll just tell you, I support freedom. So at the end of the day, CBDCs restrict your freedom. They allow surveillance. They take away your ability to store value in a digital fiat, which I certainly wouldn't advise anyway, but they just further constrict your ability to move your money as you want. They will actually, in my opinion, increase adoption of Bitcoin because Bitcoin is digital, central bank digital currency, People
Right.
get comfortable with it.
Right.
Most
Right.
importantly, though, Bitcoin has no centralized control. It's decentralized. So there you go.
Yeah, and looking at what happened with the, I know just to bring up a little side note on the Freedom Convoy, I just seen an article recently that one of the cops that donated to them, they got,
Wasn't that horrible?
you got
Did you
eight
tweet that out?
hours.
I think I might
Yeah,
have retweeted it. I
yeah,
think I might have
yeah.
retweeted. This is not even funny, people.
Yeah, this is crazy. 80
It
hours
is.
this cop had to do
Yeah.
for everyone who didn't, for anyone who doesn't know. He had to do
Yeah.
80 hours of community service on his off time, this cop, because he donated to the Freedom Convoy in Canada. This is from Canada.
So my granddad, and I know we're almost getting ready towards the end of our interview here.
Mhm.
My granddad was awarded the Order of the British Empire for
Wow.
fighting in both world wars with honor and bravery. I need people to understand that the Order of the British Empire, there's only 800 non-British citizens that have been awarded the OBE,
Wow.
and there's only been 4,500-ish awarded over the entire time. And my granddad got one. My granddad was a fighter ace in World War I, and he was group captain for Gander, Newfoundland in World War II. Okay, the most important airport that was transferring supplies and stuff over to Europe. Point being,
Wow.
this very simply, my granddad did not fight 2 world wars for our freedom to be taken away from us by some people who have never put an honest day's work in their entire lives. It's
Absolutely.
that simple.
Yeah, absolutely. I 100% agree with you, Greg. Well, it's been a huge, huge pleasure. You have no idea having you on, and hopefully we can have you back on in the next 2-3 months as the market develops. That would be awesome.
Keep doing what you do, man. Your Twitter account makes me rip roar and buy Bitcoin. Excuse me. I said it, but I did buy silver. Okay?
Buy silver and gold.
Buy silver, buy gold,
Yeah.
buy Bitcoin.
Yes.
It's that simple. Pure math for the kids. Never seen an easier trade in my whole life. Over to you.
Awesome. Talk to you soon, Greg.